Hello, beautiful souls. Thank you so much for dropping by this video. To anyone who's new to this channel, the primary focus of this channel is differentiating traditional Advaita Vedanta, traditional non-duality, with a very dangerous modern trend called Neo-Advaita. I've spent a lot of time talking about that on this channel. Very briefly, Neo-Advaita removes all the other, the complex and maybe not complex, the deep and intricate philosophy that underlies Hinduism called Sanatana Dharma, and strips it down to one thing, saying that everyone should practice self-inquiry, or there's nothing to do since you're already enlightened. It teaches one of those two things. So, if you want to know more about that, please check out some other videos on my channel. So, is non-duality dangerous? It's a funny question. So, is the modern version of non-duality dangerous? Absolutely. It's spiritual bypass city, and spiritual bypass is dangerous. It's a form of addiction. We can say that fake non-duality is very dangerous. Absolutely. But is non-duality itself dangerous? Well, it's an interesting question. And here are a few examples. Ramana Maharshi, after his awakening, he went into such a deep state of samadhi, of communion with God. He lost such awareness of the world that he allowed rats to literally chew on his body. He would sit in a room that was the ants were so thick in it that other people couldn't spend 10 minutes in that room because the ants were just like, and he lived in that room, meaning he let ants like bite his body 24/7, day after day. So here's another example. There are some great saints in India who reach a stage that they experience everything as God. And if someone were to walk up to one of these saints and say, "Give me all your money," those saints probably wouldn't have very much money, but then they would. Or if they said, "Come with me," then the saint would be like, "Oh, God is telling me to go with him. Okay." Like, "Oh, God is telling me to give them all their money. Okay." So here's a third example. I met a Neo-Advaita teacher, very radically awakened person. I don't believe 100% awakened. And someone said to this teacher, "Come with me." And the teacher was like, wasn't to the state where, I don't even want to call this person a teacher, but the Neo-Advaita teacher wasn't to the point where they experienced everything as God, but they were to the point where they experienced that it was their view that in essence everything, that everything is God and everything is good. So why not just do whatever anyone asked them to do? So it wasn't quite the same, but it was very similar. So this teacher went with them, and this person kidnapped them and locked them in a room. And this Neo-Advaita teacher was a woman, and so this person videotaped them going to the bathroom and kept them locked in a room and gave them food. And I love this teacher's solution. Was very interesting. Again, the Neo-Advaita teacher. would say to this person, thank you so much for giving me a place to stay, and thank you so much for giving me food, and I'd like to go home. And eventually the person let them go. So, so is non-duality dangerous? Well, it's an interesting question. I don't feel that I have the full realization to answer it. What I can say for certain, based on my own experience, is that non-dual states of consciousness, not full liberation, but the experience of certain non-dual truths, of certain non-dual states, is dangerous for someone who's unprepared. I'll give you a great example. I've shared this on the channel before. So I have had a very complicated and intense and harmful relationship and situation in my life. Very harmful, very like it was doing deep psychological harm to me. And so I would go through and do a form of non-dual investigation of the situation and the suffering. And then I'd come to the conclusion, oh my God, this is a gift from God. And so I stayed in the relationship. And then again, then the suffering would come up and I'd be like, oh, okay, here's another wave of suffering to do, to work through. And I would do, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, this is a gift from God. And I did it over and over and over till it practically destroyed me, literally. So non-dual practices it says my connection is unstable. One moment, it's trying to reconnect me. There we go, it reconnected me. So the thing is when I say is non-duality dangerous, I'm not talking about the truth, right? Non-duality isn't the truth. Non-duality is a path to the truth. And that's one of the other things that's left out of Neo-Advaita. Neo-Advaita is like, non-duality is the ultimate truth. All of the paths are inferior. Whereas traditional Sanatana Dharma would say, truth is one, paths are many. Ramana Maharshi himself said that there were various paths that were dependent on the state of mind of the aspirant. Everyone says Ramana Maharshi taught self-inquiry. No. Yes, he taught self-inquiry, or taught that self-inquiry was the highest path. Yes and no. Yes, he said things that can be interpreted that way, and no. He taught that it was fundamentally dependent on the state of mind, and that for an unprepared mind, for an unproperly qualified disciple, he was adamant self-inquiry will fail. He didn't go into the psychological harm, but maybe he didn't anticipate Neo-Advaita, and he certainly didn't anticipate a lot of people who go to Neo-Advaita satsangs have mental illness, and I was one of them. Had very extreme complex PTSD, and I was looking for a solution. I was completely unqualified. Anyone with a severe mental illness, and mental illness, they do have an understanding in yogic terms. It's just about the gunas, which I've talked about many times. It's a severe imbalance. Self-inquiry is for a severely balanced mind. So properly taught non-duality isn't dangerous, But properly taught non-duality doesn't start with non-duality. It actually starts in duality. It starts with karma yoga and bhakti yoga and builds from there, unless someone's already prepared. So, the last thing I'll say is non-duality is dangerous to pursue on your own. Absolutely. And I know that's very spiritually incorrect. You know, there's this idea out there of like, I am divine or I am God, so who needs a guru? Well, it's not really how it's taught or how it was taught, how it is taught by a traditional teacher. Studying non-duality on your own is Neo-Advaita. Studying non-duality from watching non-dual videos, reading about non-duality on your own, that's Neo-Advaita. Ramana spoke about this, not in those exact terms, but he used a metaphor of, asking the thief to turn himself in. Like asking the ego, because then the ego gets a hold of the teachings and then it's a shit show. And I know that from personal experience. I'm still recovering from that. From the ego getting a hold of the teachings and then using the teachings to harm me. Luckily, I didn't harm others, but that's the essence of Neo-Advaita, is the ego has gotten a hold of the teachings with a partial awakening, and then all sorts of harm is done. So thank you so much for dropping by. I wish all of you a healthy spiritual life and an end of spiritual bypass and a path that works for you. Take care. Big love.